Sir, is heaven cold too? The tiny question wavered in the frozen morning air, so faint it sounded like a prayer slipping through winter breath. Captain Mason Hale stopped mid-step among the gravestones, boots sinking into snow. He thought today would be a quiet visit to his wife's resting place. A moment of grief, silence, memory. But instead, he found two little girls kneeling at her headstone, coats too thin for the bitter wind, small hands pressed to the marble as if begging it to warm them back. The older girl's voice cracked with a pain no child should carry. "Mommy, we tried to be brave, but we don't know where to go anymore." Mason felt something pierce through the armor war had left on his heart. He slowly set down the flowers in his shaking hand. "Hey," he whispered, voice rough with disbelief. "You're safe now. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below." Snow drifted across the Cedar Falls Cemetery, a cold veil over forgotten names and remembered love. Captain Mason Hale stood alone before a granite headstone, his dark coat dusted white like an aging warrior gathering winter scars. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered and carved by conflict, the kind of figure who seemed built not by flesh but by storms. His square jaw bore 3 days of coarse stubble, peppered with gray like frost on steel. Deep lines cut beside his eyes the color of pale steel, eyes that once saw war and now saw only absence. A faint tremor touched his scarred left hand, not from the cold but from the ghosts he carried. He had survived battlefields across continents, dust, jungle, desert, but it was this silent piece of land, this headstone marking her, that truly wounded him. Emma Hale, his wife, a nurse who once glowed with life so bright it felt like walking next to sunrise. She had worn kindness like armor and stubbornness like oxygen. She never gave up on soldiers, on strangers, on him. Even when war carved darkness inside Mason's chest, she stayed, holding back the shadows with nothing but a steady touch and a laugh soft as piano notes. Cancer had taken her silently, without bullets or explosions, and Mason still could not reconcile that the bravest person he knew had fallen to an enemy he could not fight. At his heel lay Valor, his loyal German shepherd, 5 years old, a muscular, sable-coated canine with amber eyes sharp as broken amber glass. The dog's ears rose like twin sentries, scanning wind and shadows, aware of how much weight Mason carried and determined to shoulder it with him. Valor had served beside him overseas. He bore a faint scar across his right flank, a reminder of shrapnel that nearly stole his life. Mason often believed that in another life Valor would have been a guardian spirit instead of flesh and bone. The morning was still, broken only by the whisper of wind threading through pine trees. It felt as if the world itself held its breath, unwilling to disturb the grieving soldier. Mason exhaled, his breath a soft cloud dissolving into the white void. "I'm here," he murmured to the stone, voice hoarse. "Didn't miss a day." He brushed snow from the engraved name, fingers lingering on her initials as if touch might summon warmth. He didn't cry. He rarely did anymore. But sorrow lived behind his ribs like an animal that refused to sleep. A sudden sound pierced the silence, a small, trembling sob. Then another. Mason stiffened. Valor rose instantly, tail rigid, head turning toward the sound. Mason followed his gaze. At the far edge of the cemetery, 2 small figures huddled together, shivering behind a row of graves. Snow clung to their threadbare clothes like cruel frost. Children, girls, twins, maybe 7 or 8. Their coats were too thin, their shoes soaked through. One clutched a torn stuffed rabbit missing an ear. The other wiped her face with a sleeve already stiff. With cold tears, Mason's instincts kicked. Protector, soldier, survivor. But something else cut deeper, the echo of Emma's voice. "One day, Mace, someone fragile might walk into your life, and you'll know why you endured everything. Promise me you'll listen to your heart when that moment comes." His breath stilled. He moved toward the girls, boots crunching snow. Valor walked beside him, cautious yet gentle, tail lowered but not threatening. As he neared, he heard whispers, fragile like frost about to crack. "Will she help us, Lily?" The smaller girl sobbed, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold. "Mama said the lady named Emma could help." The older one, Lily apparently, pressed trembling fingers to a headstone. Her hair was chestnut brown, long but tangled, a halo of ice-thin strands around a small oval face. She had big hazel eyes that seemed much older than her years, as if the world had already taught her too much. Her little sister Mia looked nearly identical, but rounder in the cheeks, softer, her nose red from crying. Both stared at the stone before them, the stone that bore Emma's name. Mason froze mid-step. His heart lurched painfully. The scene looked unreal, like a hallucination carved out of grief. Two children kneeling at his wife's grave asking for help, Emma's name catching in their breath like prayer. Valor moved first. The canine approached with slow, practiced steps, lowering his head to seem smaller, a sign of peace he'd learned during therapy visits Emma once encouraged. Mia reached for him instinctively, her tiny hand trembling, rested on Valor's thick fur. Valor pressed his head gently into her palm. She let out a wobbly sigh, half sob, half relief, and buried her face in the dog's neck. Mason approached, throat tight. "Hey," he said softly, as though afraid a louder voice might break them. "Where are your parents?" Lily's lips trembled. "Mama, she's sick. She said if anything bad happened, we had to find Emma Hale. She said Emma once saved her when nobody else did. She said Emma would always help us." Mason felt the world flicker. He knelt slowly, bringing himself eye level with them. Snow clung to his lashes. His voice cracked. "Emma, we know," Lily whispered. "Mama said she might be gone. But she told us Emma would still find a way. Mama said angels don't stop helping when they go to heaven." Emma's words rushed back like warm breath in winter. "If two little lights ever find you, listen to your heart." Mason's chest tightened. Fate had a cruel sense of timing, or perhaps Emma truly had left one more mission for him. He took off his heavy military coat and wrapped it around the girls. They stiffened at first, then melted into the warmth. His arms came around them, awkward, unsure, terrified of breaking them, as Valor pressed against their legs protectively. "We don't have anywhere else to go," Mia whispered, voice small as falling snow. "Please," Lily added, "don't make us leave her." The soldier inside him hardened with purpose. There were missions you chose, and missions fate dropped in your hands. This one felt like Emma's last command. "I'm Mason," he said quietly. "Mason Hale. Emma was my wife." Lily's eyes widened. "So you're the soldier she talked about?" He blinked. "She talked about me?" "Only when she smiled," Mia whispered through chattering teeth. For the first time in a long time, Mason's heart beat with both pain and warmth. He swallowed hard, nodding. "Come with me. I'll take care of you." The wind howled then, like the world exhaling in relief. Mason stood, lifting one girl in each arm. Valor circled them, alert, protective. Together they walked toward the cemetery gates, but before they reached the exit, Valor suddenly stiffened, ears sharp, gaze locked on the tree line. A black SUV idled in the distance, engine running. A silhouette sat inside, watching. Mason's pulse spiked. Valor growled, low in warning, fur bristling like static before lightning. The SUV's headlights flickered once, an eerie acknowledgement, then the vehicle slowly rolled backward and disappeared into the drifting snow. Mason held the girls tighter. This was no coincidence. Emma's promise, two lost children, and now unseen eyes tracking them. Something more than grief had walked into his life today, something dangerous. And for the first time in months, Mason felt the cold edge of war humming beneath his ribs again. He whispered to Emma's name in the storming air. "If this is your doing, I hear you, and I won't fail them." Valor pressed against his leg, ready, waiting. The mission had begun, and somewhere unseen, danger smiled back. The hospital air carried a sterile chill that clung to skin and bone, smelling faintly of disinfectant, metal, and unsaid prayers. St. Helena Community Medical Center was small, a faded brick building half hidden among the pines on the outskirts of Cedar Falls. It looked like a place built on hope and fragile budgets, patched walls, humming fluorescent lights, and a waiting room with chairs older than some wars. Yet it held lives inside, flickering like candles fighting drafts from doors that never fully closed. Mason Hale pushed through the entrance with the twins in his arms and Valor pacing tight circles around his legs. Snow melted in droplets along the polished linoleum floor, and every nurse they passed looked up, some curious, some wary, some softening when they saw the children asleep against the soldier's chest. At the reception desk sat Nurse Ellen Ramirez, a woman in her late 30s with olive-tan skin, dark hair pulled into a low bun, and eyes shaped by both kindness and exhaustion. Her frame was petite but sturdy, the kind of nurse who had lifted more hearts than boxes. She scanned the scene. Uniform coat wrapped around two pale children, a battle-scarred shepherd, a man whose presence seemed carved from silence and fatigue, and understanding flickered in her expression. Ellen had seen soldiers like Mason before, strength housing grief, duty wrestling with wounds that never bled visibly. She stood, voice gentle but steady. They called ahead. ICU's prepped. Come with me. Mason nodded, gripping the children tighter. Valor kept pace, claws tapping rhythmically like anxious metronome ticks. They reached a glass-paneled ICU room where Sarah Brooks lay, small against the white bed, hands fragile on the sheets. Sarah was in her mid-30s, tall but now shrunken by illness, once strong features softened by fatigue. Her skin was pale with a faint olive undertone, as if the sun used to love her but had forgotten her in recent months. Her hair, chestnut brown streaked with early gray from stress and sickness, framed a face that once must have been striking. High cheekbones, large, warm eyes, now dimmed but alive with fierce love when they saw her daughters. She had the look of someone who had fought hard in life, perhaps too hard, and had given most of her strength away to keep her daughters safe. Her breath rasped through the oxygen mask. She reached a trembling hand toward them. Lily and Mia stirred awake, whispering "Mama," in voices that broke the sterile quiet. Mason set them gently on the bed. The children clung to her, tears falling into the thin gown. Sarah smiled weakly, a smile that held pain and peace at once. When she noticed Mason, her expression shifted, recognition and gratitude mixing with sadness. "Captain, hail!" she rasped, voice cracking like thin ice. "Emma said you would come. She said one if she couldn't finish, but you would." Mason swallowed hard. Hearing Emma's name from another woman's mouth felt like someone pressing on a bruise that never healed. "I found them at her grave," he said quietly. Sarah let out a breath that sounded like relief. "Then she kept her promise." Her gaze moved to Valor, who stood by the bed, head low. "And the hero dog," she whispered, trying to smile wider. "Still protecting everyone." Valor stepped forward, placing his front paws carefully on the mattress. He lowered his head near Sarah's hand. She stroked his ear weakly. "Good boy," she whispered. "Emma always said, even angels need guardians." For a moment the room held only quiet devotion. A soldier, a dying mother, two lost children, one faithful dog, bound together by a woman who was no longer on earth, yet still tying souls like thread. Then Sarah's expression changed. Fear crept into her eyes, her fingers tightening slightly on Mason's wrist with surprising strength for someone so frail. "They came," she whispered, barely audible. "Men, said they could help, said they had papers, promised food, shelter." She swallowed painfully. "But lies, all lies. They wanted them, the girls, for something." Rage stirred in Mason's chest, cold and sharp. "Who?" Dark SUV, tall man, pale eyes, smile that didn't reach his face. Her brow furrowed. "He said Emma owed a debt, that her kindness had consequences." Mason felt ice crawl through his spine. The SUV at the cemetery. Not coincidence. Predators circling angels. Sarah coughed hard, entire body shaking. Ellen rushed back in, adjusting oxygen lines, murmuring comfort. Sarah seized Mason's hand again. "Don't let them take my babies," she begged. "Emma trusted you. I do too." Mason's jaw tightened. "No one will touch them," he promised, voice like steel dragged across stone. Her eyes softened then, peace returning like a tide retreating after a final crash. She looked at Lily and Mia. "Be brave," she whispered. "Together. Always." "Don't leave, Mama," Mia sobbed. "Please don't." Sarah leaned her forehead to theirs. "My body's tired," she whispered. "But love doesn't leave. I will follow you. In every sunrise." A long breath, a softer one. The heart monitor hummed, then stretched into one unbroken tone. The world narrowed to that sound. Ellen bowed her head. Lily screamed. Mia clutched Valor so tightly her knuckles whitened. Valor didn't bark. Instead, he pressed his muzzle to Sarah's still hand and let out a low, mournful whine, the same sound he made when soldiers didn't come home. Mason's knees hit the floor. He hadn't fallen like this since receiving the call about Emma. A soldier who never broke now shook with silent tremors, the weight of two worlds he couldn't save pressing his spine. Two wars, two women who believed in him, both reaching final rest while handing him fragile heartbeats to protect. It was too much, and yet exactly what he had to carry. Ellen gently touched Mason's shoulder. "You should take them," she whispered. "Before social services gets word. Before whoever that was tries anything." She wiped her eyes. Sarah talked about Emma, said she saved her once, said Emma said kindness travels like light. Mason nodded, throat tight. He gathered the girls again, holding them as they clung to him like life raft and anchor both. Valor pressed himself against them. The group moved toward the exit, grief trailing like smoke. As they reached the sliding doors, something in the reflection caught Mason's eye. Outside, far across the parking lot, a figure in a long dark coat stood watching. Tall, posture straight like someone used to command, pale hair slicked back, hands in pockets. When Mason turned fully, the man stepped into the shadow behind a light pole and vanished. No footsteps in the snow, no sound, only the faint echo of threat. Mason tightened his hold on the girls. Valor growled low. The world had shifted. Emma's last thread had pulled him into a storm. He didn't know who hunted these children or why, but war had returned to him, wearing a different uniform. And this time, he wasn't fighting for a country. He was fighting for a promise made between graves and hearts. Mason whispered to Sarah's memory and Emma's name like battlefield prayer. "I will not fail them." The snow outside glittered like broken glass as the automatic doors opened, letting the cold push against them. A new battle waited beyond that threshold. Snow fell in lazy drifts over the silent pine ridge, soft and deceptively peaceful, as if winter itself were trying to lull danger to sleep. Mason Hale's cabin sat half buried beneath thick white warm lamplight glowing from within, like a lone heart beating in the wilderness. Inside, heat from the wood stove curled upward in gentle waves, filling the rustic space with the smell of pine resin and faint smoke. This cabin, tucked deep in the Montana woods, had once been Mason's place of solitude after war, his retreat from nightmares and noise. Tonight, it had become something else, a fragile fortress for two small souls who clung to him as though he were the last standing wall between them and an unseen abyss. Lily and Mia slept in the small bedroom down the hall, curled beneath quilts Emma had hand-stitched years ago. Even in rest, their tiny bodies clung together like they feared the world might pry them apart. At the door lay Valor, the shepherd's broad chest rising and falling in steady breaths, but his ears twitched with each creak of wood or wind shift. A soldier, even in sleep. Mason sat in the dim living room, a single lamp casting long shadows across the scarred table where his old military dog tags lay beside a half-empty mug. His broad shoulders were hunched, fatigue written in the heavy way he held his head. Yet his eyes remained open, fixed on the fireplace, seeing not flame, but deserts, explosions, a tunnel of dust where ghosts rose screaming. Sleep had become a battlefield, and he was losing ground every night. Suddenly, his breath hitched, his body jerked. He wasn't sitting anymore. He was back in Helmand Province, dust choking his throat, radio screaming, Valor dragging a wounded soldier by the vest while bullets tore the air. Mason lunged forward in the dream, shouting, then snapped awake, sweat cold on his skin. Valor was beside him now, head pressed against Mason's knee, tail still, eyes full of worry. The dog had sensed the nightmare and come as he always did, the only creature who could pull Mason back from the battlefield hiding behind his eyelids. "Good boy," Mason whispered, stroking Valor's neck. "Still saving me." Outside, branches scraped the cabin roof, wind whispering danger through the pines. Mason's instincts prickled. Valor lifted his head, ears sharp, then headlights cut through the trees. They both froze. A black SUV rolled into view, tires crunching slowly across snow. Its engine hummed low and predatory, like a patient animal. The same kind of vehicle from the cemetery. The same slow, watching presence from the hospital parking lot. Mason's pulse sharpened. Valor's lip curled, a rumble building in his chest. Not full aggression yet, but a promise. The SUV stopped. No doors opened. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the engine died. Mason reached for the shotgun mounted beneath the table, the motion fluid, an old reflex. Valor stepped in front of him, muscles taut, waiting. Instinct told Mason not to open the door. Whoever they were, they watched, they calculated. They wanted him to make the first mistake. Wind howled through the pines. The cabin walls creaked. Then, a soft shuffle at the front porch. A faint shadow moved beneath the door. Paper slid under it. Footsteps retreated. Tires rolled again. Slowly, deliberately, the SUV reversed down the snowy trail and disappeared into the tree line like a ghost, slipping back into its grave. Mason waited another beat, then moved, weapon still in hand. He bent and lifted the paper. A single torn page, jagged edges, letters scrawled with calm certainty. The girls are ours. Walk away. No threat. A declaration, as if ownership of children was a matter of right. Valor pressed his muzzle to Mason's leg, tension vibrating through him. Mason's jaw clenched. "Over my dead body," he muttered. He opened the door and fired once into the sky, the sound thunderous enough to shake snow off branches. It was not a warning. It was a vow. Inside, the commotion stirred Lily. She padded down the hall, tiny feet silent on the wooden floor, clutching a fraying stuffed rabbit. Her hair stuck in sleep-tangled waves, cheeks flushed from warmth. "Mason?" she whispered, voice small but steady. "Is someone bad here?" Mason knelt, his strong hands steady despite the rage simmering beneath his skin. "Nobody's going to hurt you," he said softly. "Not while I'm here." Valor circled Lily once protectively, nose brushing her hand. She buried fingers in his fur. Mia soon followed, still half asleep, thumb in her mouth, clutching a tattered blanket. Mason guided them back to bed. He sat on the edge until their breathing steadied again, brushing a hand through Mia's hair. Then he returned to the living room and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Valor lay by the door again, but this time his eyes stayed open too. Morning came with a violent knock. Mason's grip tightened around the shotgun, but when he opened the door, he found not shadowed men, but chaos. Vehicles lined his driveway. Reporters bundled in thick coats, cameras already raised, social workers in wool hats with clipboards, deputies he recognized from town, a few sympathetic, others stiff-backed and uneasy. At the center stood Daniel Holmes, the county child welfare agent, mid-40s, thin build, pressed jacket, dark hair combed back, glasses thin-framed and precise. His posture was straightened by years spent wielding paperwork like a blade. His face was neutral, but his eyes held that rigid certainty of someone who trusted institutions more than people. He looked Mason over, gaze taking in the fatigue, the weapon still in Mason's hand, the dog at his side. "Captain Hale," Holmes began, tone clipped, "we received a report that 2 minor children are in your custody under unclear circumstances." A female journalist shoved a mic toward Mason. "Sir, are you aware some sources claim you abducted?" Valor lunged forward with a single deep bark. The crowd recoiled instantly. Holmes flinched. Reporters stepped back. Even deputies eased away. Valor didn't snarl. He didn't need to. His presence commanded space. Mason lowered the weapon but did not put it away. "They're safe," he said coldly. "Safer than with whoever sent that SUV last night." Holmes blinked. "SUV?" Mason held up the note. Holmes read it, his jaw tightening, but the man's training chained his expression. "We still need to establish formal guardianship and conduct welfare checks. Trauma bonding situations can be complicated." "You think I took them?" Mason finished for him. Holmes didn't answer. He didn't need to. He looked like a man who had seen enough real abuse to doubt everything first. A survivor of bureaucracy wars, not battlefields. Inside, the twins peeked from behind the doorframe, clutching Valor's fur. Reporters raised cameras instantly. Mason stepped in front of them like instinct, like breathing. "They stay here," he said quietly. "With me." Holmes hesitated. Logic, fear, protocol wrestled in his features. Then he exhaled. "You'll need to come in for a formal hearing. Today." Mason nodded slowly. "I'll be there." Holmes gave one more searching look, then signaled the crowd to disperse. Slowly, reluctantly, they retreated. Valor stayed motionless until the last camera left the drive. When silence returned, Mason closed the door and leaned against it, chest heaving with adrenaline. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Are they going to take us?" Mason crouched so they saw his eyes, steady, fierce. "Not if I have breath left in me." Valor pressed into the girls, tail wrapped around their legs like a shield. Outside, far beyond the trees, unseen eyes watched once more. The war was not approaching, it was already here. The day of the custody hearing dawned gray and brittle, sunlight struggling through low winter clouds as if the sky itself hesitated to illuminate what lay ahead. But instead of driving straight to the county courthouse, Mason Hale found his truck rolling down a different forest road, one marked not by law or logic, but by instinct, by a soldier's understanding that the enemy never waits politely for paperwork to finish. The girls were safe at the cabin for the moment, watched over by Mrs. Harris, the elderly widow neighbor, a short, silver-haired woman with wrinkled olive skin and sharp eyes, softened by years of grandmotherly tenderness. She had once been a schoolteacher, gentle yet full of iron beneath the cardigan and knitted scarf. "Go," she had whispered, gripping Mason's forearm. "Bring back the truth. Kids deserve peace." Now, the truck's tires crunched over frozen earth and pine needles as Mason followed coordinates scribbled on the back of Sarah's old medical bill, one of the few clues she'd hidden in her hospital bag before collapsing. Valor sat alert in the passenger seat, head high, ears forward, amber eyes burning with focused intelligence. His injured flank had healed from old battles, though a faint scar glimmered beneath his fur like a white ghost at the edge of strength. Mason glanced at the dog. "One more mission?" Valor's tail made a single sweep across the seat, minimal, disciplined, but firm. He understood. The road narrowed into a forgotten logging trail, then dissolved into woods. Mason parked behind a thick stand of spruce, winter breath steaming as he stepped out. The cold bit sharply at his face, but his mind sharpened with it. He was a man who looked like he was carved from dark granite, square jaw rough with 2 days of stubble, blue-gray eyes narrowed beneath the brim of a wool cap, heavy coat moving like armor over his muscular frame. He checked his gear with smooth efficiency, born of too many deployments. Flashlight secured, pistol holstered under the jacket, compact suppressed rifle slung low, spare magazines inside chest rig. Inside his palm, calluses whispered of training grounds and battlefield steel. They moved silently through the trees, senses stretched, minutes passed. Then Valor froze, nose lifted, breath sudden and sharp. His tail stiffened. Mason crouched beside him, eyes narrowing through the branches. Ahead, half buried by the forest, lay a fenced compound of weathered metal siding and stacked crates camouflaged with tarps. No signs, no flags, nothing to reveal its purpose. Only the faint hum of a generator and a security camera angled down at the clearing told the truth. This wasn't a forgotten shed, it was a hidden outpost. Mason's gut hardened. He scanned again. 2 guards, one tall and gaunt with a shaved head and nervous energy twitching in every muscle, the other broad-bodied, thick beard hiding most of his face, both in tactical jackets with patches removed. Private security, off the books. He'd seen the type overseas, the kind who fought not for ideals but for money and power. "Stay," Mason whispered to Valor. The dog crouched, ready but patient. Mason took a wider circle, slipping through shadows, breath steady, boots barely whispering on the snow. When the bearded guard turned slightly away, Mason raised 2 fingers, signaling. A nearly inaudible whistle followed. Valor shot forward like a streak of living thunder, low and ballistic. The gaunt guard barely had time to gasp before Valor's weight slammed into his chest, jaws gripping the man's arm, wrenching the gun downward. Mason surged forward, striking the bearded guard across the jaw with the rifle stock, then sweeping his legs. He fell, stunned, weapon skittering. Valor released on command, returning to Mason's side, chest rising and falling in quiet power. Mason tied both men quickly with flex cuffs, gagging one when he began to curse. "Should have stayed in the city," Mason muttered, voice rough gravel. "Woods don't forgive wolves." He moved toward the structure. Inside, he spotted what made his blood ice cold. Cages. Not animal cages, children-sized ones, a small handprint smeared across a barred wall, shoes left haphazardly like abandoned hope, tears burned behind his eyes but never fell. War taught him to bleed inward. A sudden metallic click echoed behind him, a voice, deep, composed, carried across the chill air. "You shouldn't have come here, Captain Hale." Mason turned slowly, rifle up. The man who stepped from the shadows wore winter tactical gear, too clean for the woods, boots polished, blonde hair slicked tight. Late 40s, tall, posture straight as parade rest, cheekbones sharp, a pale scar slicing diagonally from temple to jaw. His eyes were pale blue, almost colorless, calculating in a way that stripped warmth from air. He carried an AR-15 professionally, finger just outside the trigger guard. "Major Preston Vance," Mason murmured, recognition sliding through memory like a knife through canvas. They had overlapped once in supply briefings overseas. Vance had been a military logistics and procurement officer, smart, ambitious, ruthless behind a polite salute. Rumors had followed him, inappropriate dealings, shady contractors, moral shortcuts, nothing ever proven. Men like him moved through war like sharks through dark water, silent, unseen, devouring without leaving ripples. Vance smiled faintly. "Well, you do remember. That's flattering." Mason's jaw tightened. "You're trafficking kids." "I'm providing a service," Vance replied, voice polite enough to curdle blood. "A network of donors with considerable influence wants certain opportunities. You wouldn't believe who pays. Judges, executives. The world doesn't run on honor, Captain. It runs on leverage." Mason's finger curled over his trigger. "They're children, which makes them valuable." Vance shrugged. "I expected you at court. But grief makes men unpredictable, doesn't it? First your wife, now playing hero to someone else's children. Noble." His tone sharpened. "Stupid. You could have walked away." Valor rumbled a warning, low and primal. Vance's eyes flicked to him. "Ah yes, the famous Valor. Shame, really. That dog could sell for a fortune overseas." Rage detonated in Mason like a silent explosion. "I'm not leaving without shutting this down." Vance sighed. "Then I suppose this is where your story ends." He lifted his rifle. The world snapped into motion. Mason dropped sideways, fired 3 shots, controlled bursts. One hit Vance's shoulder, spinning him backward. Gunfire erupted from deeper in the compound, 2 more armed men running out. Valor launched himself, catching one by the arm, dragging him screaming. The second raised a rifle. Mason shot him in the thigh and chest in a smooth double tap. Bullet casings clinked like metal tears. Vance tried to rise. Mason kicked the rifle away, slamming a knee into his ribs. "Game's over," Vance wheezed, but even injured he smiled, a predator's smile. "This operation is larger than you think." And now it's smaller. From inside the building, muffled crying rose. Mason kicked the door. Inside were 3 children, 2 boys, 1 girl, dirty, shivering, but alive. He cut the locks. "You're safe. I'm here." Valor stood guard at the entrance, blood staining his fur, but he was steady, tail stiff, eyes burning with mission focus. They moved out quickly, calling the FBI once the extraction path was secure. Agents arrived within minutes, led by Agent Cole Matthews, mid-30s, lean build, sharp brown eyes beneath short-cropped hair, clean-shaven, features tired but alert. He had the worn calm of someone who'd seen too much exploitation in his career and still burned to stop it. He recognized Mason from service records, respect flickering across his face. "We'll take it from here, Captain." Mason nodded, hand trembling slightly as adrenaline crashed. Valor's flank bled, a graze, not deep, but Mason's breath caught at the sight like he'd been shot instead. "Easy, boy. Good boy." Valor pressed his head into Mason's chest, breath warm, steady. As FBI cuffed Vance, who still wore that cold, unnervingly calm smile, Mason glanced at the sky. Stars peeked through clouds, sharp points of light piercing darkness. He imagined Emma there. Sarah, too, watching, approving. "You were right," he whispered. "Some battles don't end." Snow whispered through pine branches like a benediction. Mason looked down at Valor, at the freed children, at the distant thought of Lily and Mia sleeping safe at the cabin. He had won this fight, but peace was still far away, and as Vance was dragged past him, the man murmured, "This doesn't stop anything. It only wakes it up." Mason didn't reply. But somewhere deep inside, the soldier in him answered, "Then let it wake." Morning broke with a pale gold light spreading across Cedar Falls like a quiet blessing, the kind that comes not after victory but after survival. Snow was already softening along the edges where the first hints of spring whispered through the pines, as if winter itself finally loosened its grim hold on the world. Mason Hale stood in the county courthouse hallway with Lily and Mia clutching each of his hands, Valor seated alert at his heel. The German shepherd's thick sable coat shone under the fluorescent lights, ears forward, posture proud despite the faint healing scab along his shoulder, a reminder of battle, loyalty, sacrifice. The courthouse smelled like paper, coffee, and old varnish, the timeless scent of legal battles fought with pens instead of rifles. A woman walked toward them, heels tapping a composed rhythm on the marble floor. Judge Evelyn Caraway, late 50s, tall and slim, with silver streaks running through ebony hair pulled into a tight bun. Lines etched her face not from cruelty, but from decades of carrying the weight of other people's pain. Her dark eyes were sharp, the sort of gaze that measured truth not by law but by soul. She wore a dark wool suit, posture impeccable, not stiff but dignified, like a woman used to storms but never broken by them. She stopped before Mason, hands folded lightly. "Captain Hale." Her voice held calm metal. "Thank you for coming back today. I heard about what you uncovered." Mason dipped his head respectfully. "Had to keep a promise, ma'am." Judge Caraway's gaze shifted to the girls. They were bundled in small winter jackets, micro-camo scarves wrapped neatly around their necks. Lily stood with chin slightly raised, brave in the way a child learns to be too early. Mia leaned against Mason's side, thumb near her lips, cheeks rosy from nervousness. Caraway's stern expression softened, the way frost retreats under sunlight. "And you two must be Lily and Mia." Mia nodded shyly. Lily squeezed Mason's hand tighter but lifted her chin. "We live with him now. He made us cocoa and told us the snow listens if you whisper to it." A ghost of a smile tugged at Caraway's lips. She looked at Valor next, eyes widening slightly when she saw the service patch clipped to his harness. Service dog, guardian. "And this is Valor, I assume." Valor straightened his body at the sound of his name and let out one soft breath. Caraway, who had likely stood before generals, criminals, and senators alike, looked momentarily humbled by the dog's calm authority. "A guardian indeed," she murmured. The hearing room was small, modest wood furniture and flags still, daylight filtering through long windows. Inside sat Marla Jensen, the county social services attorney, early 40s, short blonde bob, glasses, neat navy suit. She had a warm face, though her posture screamed rules and procedure. Experience had made her cautious, but not hardened. Next to her was Deputy Ted. Ramon Ortiz, a sheriff's deputy in his early 30s, with broad shoulders and a calm gaze, thick black hair buzz cut short. He'd once served Marine infantry. Mason could see it in his stance, the readiness to move if things went wrong. His jawline was square, shave precise, a tiny scar above his eyebrow hinting at an old deployment. Holmes, the child welfare agent, sat further down the table looking less rigid than before. The night's events, the overturned trafficking compound, and Valor's involvement had shifted something in him. Gone was suspicion. In its place sat something like respect, and perhaps a quiet apology he didn't know how to voice. The hearing itself was brief. Truth didn't always need theatrics. Sometimes it only needed courage standing steady in front of it. Evidence of Mason's military service, Sarah Brooks's recorded statement from the hospital, obtained by Agent Cole Matthews, reports on the compound raid, and documents proving the children were now safe. No one contested guardianship. Instead, one by one, officials spoke not like bureaucrats but like witnesses to something rare. Jensen cleared her throat. It's not often the system meets someone who risked his life not for duty but for love he could have walked away from. She looked at the children. "They are safe." Ortiz nodded once at Mason, the Marine in him saluting without lifting a hand. "The county supports full custody approval." Holmes finally spoke, voice quieter than before. "Children need warriors sometimes, not just papers." Silence lingered, thick with meaning. Judge Caraway lifted her gavel, gaze solemn, like she was sealing fate with reverence instead of authority. "Captain Mason Hale, by authority of this court, you are now the legal guardian of Lily and Mia Brooks." The gavel tapped once. The sound was quiet, yet it thundered through Mason's chest like a heartbeat restored. Lily let out a sharp breath, half sob, half laugh, and threw her arms around Mason's waist. Mia followed, face buried against him. Valor pressed against their legs, whining softly in joy. Mason closed his eyes, one arm around each child, dog against his knee. There were no visible tears, but his breath trembled slightly. The crack in armor grief could not fully steal over. Outside, the wind had softened. Snowmelt dripped from courthouse railings. For the first time in a long time, Mason felt not the ache of losing, but the fierce warmth of gaining something he hadn't dared hope for. Family not by blood, but by battle earned. That evening, he drove the girls to the cemetery. Clouds glowed rose gold above the horizon, the world quiet as if sacred. Emma's grave lay dusted with thawing snow. Mason knelt, fingers brushing her name carved into stone, breath catching like a prayer. "I fought my whole life for a country," he whispered, "but today I fought for your wish, and for them." Lily leaned forward, kissing the cold stone gently. Mia placed a tiny cookie wrapped in tissue, her version of a gift for angels. Valor lay beside Mason, head resting on his knee, amber eyes soft and knowing. The wind lifted slightly, stirring the evergreens, like a whisper passing through. Above them, twilight settled, not looming, but peaceful. Mason closed his eyes as the girls giggled softly at something invisible, some childish magic that only the innocent could see. He let the sound fill him like oxygen. Family, he realized, wasn't given. It was chosen, protected, built, not by bloodlines, but by battles survived side by side. Valor lifted his head, gazed skyward, and released a single soft bark, neither warning nor challenge, but greeting. A salute to Emma, perhaps to Sarah, perhaps to fate itself. Mason's voice broke in a rough whisper. "We made it home." And for the first time since war, and since death tore open his chest, home finally answered. In the end, perhaps what happened to Mason, Lily, Mia, and Valor was not luck, not coincidence, but a quiet miracle. Sometimes God works not through thunder or lightning, but through the smallest whispers, through tears on a cold grave, a soldier who still believes in duty, and a dog whose loyalty speaks louder than words. In life, hardship arrives like winter storms, and many of us walk through seasons of loneliness, fear, and loss. But just as snow melts and light returns, grace has a way of finding those who keep walking. Some miracles are not about saving the world, but about saving one heart, or two little girls who just needed someone to choose them. If you believe that kindness can still change lives, that faith can guide us even in darkness, and that God still sends quiet angels, sometimes in the shape of brave soldiers and loyal dogs, then share this story. Leave a comment about a time you saw grace in your life. Subscribe so you don't miss the next journey of courage and compassion. May God bless you and everyone you love. May He walk beside you in your battles, comfort you in your tears, and surprise you with miracles you didn't even know you were praying for.